How large are our vulnerabilities? How wide are the gaps in our cybersecurity?
Well, thanks, Kailey. Look, we've been at cyber war now for some time. Obviously, this has raised the profile in the public domain, but the amount of vulnerabilities, there's about 20,000 new vulnerabilities announced a year. And so the systems that we're now running are very complex. We're moving to the cloud. We're putting more data online. So the systems are complex and there are a lot of vulnerabilities. So organizations need to pay close attention to this.
So let's talk about what organizations can do. What kind of investment does it take to, as Joe was alluding to, harden your digital defenses, to lock your digital doors?
Yeah, so the first thing is organizations need to identify their key assets. They need to make sure that access control is strong around those. Joe mentioned what's called two-factor authentication, where you have more than just a password. That's important as well. And then making sure that their employees are trained, they have adequate controls, and they're testing those controls, testing those defenses to making sure that they find the gaps before the organized criminals do.
And then let's talk about as well the actors, because obviously a lot of the focus right now is on Russia, the potential for them to be executing cyber attacks, not just in Ukraine, but across borders here in the U.S. Have we actually seen that being borne out in reality, or are we still just talking about hypotheticals here?
We see it every day, and there's many organized, there's over 100 criminal gangs that are operating, some of which come from countries that you might be mentioning today. But a lot of the techniques and procedures and the tools that they use are known, and organizations can go to bodies, public bodies in the US and in their local countries, where they can identify the kind of activities that they need to watch out for, and then make sure that they've got defenses in place to protect their organizations and their assets against those sort of scenarios.
Is there a risk, Ross, of putting your eye only on one ball and focusing on Russia and the potential for attacks there and opening up doors to other bad actors?
Yes, I think that this is a real concern for the industry, that we run from headline to headline, and this is really just a headline. We talk about, is there a sort of cyber war coming? We've been in a cyber war for a number of years now, and we're seeing millions of attacks on a daily basis all over the world, but a lot of it's driven by organized criminals. There's money at stake here, and where there's money, there's crime. And so these headlines that grab our attention, we start focusing on one country or the other, that's actually a distraction. Organizations need to, rather than look outward, they need to look inward. They need to look at how their infrastructure is being developed, how they're managing it, how they're responding to incidents, and ensuring that, as I said, that they're identifying gaps in their protection and they're solving those issues without worrying about who the actor's going to be, because there's many actors, and it doesn't matter what country. We're seeing an onslaught of cybercrime on a sort of an hourly basis.
And if I'm an individual as well, not just someone who's the leader of a company or an organization, how great is the risk to individuals versus broader infrastructure, power grids, companies at a larger scale?
Well, critical national infrastructure is obviously the key focus, but in terms of individuals, especially when they're working in those environments, making sure that they're not sharing the information between their work life and their personal life. Don't use the same passwords, keep your emails separate, so that you don't have a situation where, if you're compromised at home, which is a lot easier to do than compromising an organization, that what you use to sort of authenticate at home, your password and so forth, can be used then to go after the organization that you work at. And then I think it's important for employees and members of institutions to make sure that the organizations they represent are taking appropriate steps, not just to secure their customer data, but the personal data of the individual, the employees themselves as well.
Yeah, I'm recalling from last month, Apple and Meta disclosing that they had been hacked because hackers literally emailed people and pretended to be authorities saying that we need all of this information. How much of the vulnerability is on sheer human error versus more systemic issues with cyber infrastructure?
Well, in terms of Verizon's data breach and investigation report of 2021, 85% of sort of breaches was related to human error or some human mistake that had changed a system that allowed hackers to get in or provided information that allowed the hackers to use that information. So human is the biggest defense, but it's also our biggest weakness.
That's really encouraging to hear. Finally, last question. We've talked a lot about defense, the need to bulk up defense, kind of diminish vulnerabilities. What about on offense? What can be done offensively versus defensively?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Kailey. And I think in the industry, many years ago, we were really focused on sort of being proactive, adding those defenses because we didn't have them. And then we added sort of our reactive approach, which is the incident management side, should those defenses be sort of got through. But I think we've missed a step in the industry, and it's actually looking at the infrastructure through the eyes of the actors and then using their behavior to test our environments, to test our defenses, so that we actually ensure those investments that we made initially are working in the way that they should, but more importantly, that we don't have to use that reactive incident management because our defenses are actually solid. So I think that's the missing step in the industry that organizations are really starting to focus on now and really address.